Of all animation filmmakers out there, Satoshi Kon easily has one of the most fascinating catalogs and legacies out there. His first two films, Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, were companion pieces that share a lot of similarities in terms of narrative style and what industry they take place in. However, the styles and contrast are part of what makes them work so well, especially being released one after the other. It's as if watching one film opens up your perspective on the other that much more. However, Kon knew that this type of storytelling was never meant to be his only outlet of creating art or a narrative. He knew how repetitive it could be if he just made films and projects like this for the rest of his career, and he never intended on doing so. And so, he strived to create something a bit more conventional with a wider expansion on character relationships than anything with his third film, Tokyo Godfathers, which, as the title suggests, is my pick for being the perfect, and I mean perfect, Christmas movie. And, maybe it would have been a better idea to make this video around, the actual holidays, but my Satoshi Kon series started this month, and so it's going to end this month as well. Sorry, not sorry. Satoshi Kon was never a stranger to finding new ways to tell stories about human connection and society, and finding different ways of exploring these themes in unique scenarios. Tokyo Godfathers is what many people would call his most easily accessible film due to the fact that it doesn't feature a lot of the mysterious, dreamlike interweavings with reality that's featured within Perfect Blue and that's emphasized with Millennium Actress. It's simply about three homeless people trying to find this baby's mother on Christmas, whilst also coming to deal with the issues that their troubled and flawed pasts have given them. However, Kon's core themes that were present within his previous two works before this film are still present and on full display, showcasing how familial relationships and connections are bound by many things outside of blood, and how family trauma can well up so much inside of us that it distances ourselves from our homes and families, sometimes entirely disconnecting ourselves from them. The execution of these themes are much simpler than his previous works, which is something that Kon intended to do as a way to venture from his past films, as he was beginning to grow tired of doing the same storytelling techniques after both Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress came out together. He details this in an interview with the Midnight Eye here. Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress are set where both dreams and reality are blended. If you make things the same way as you always have, things can get redundant, so I decided to work with a different kind of story. The feeling like I wanted to face the challenge posed by that kind of work was strong. When films are made and the divide between dreams and reality is blurred, the story can become overly theatrical. With Tokyo Godfathers, we intentionally made the story simple and focused on exposing the background of the characters more. One thing to note too is that the psychedelic dreamlike aspects of Kon's work are not entirely abandoned for this film. They still exist but are held to a very minimal frequency, mostly being signified for flashbacks than anything else, such as when we first see Miyuki's flashback intertwining with Hana's search for them and the revelation of her worsening health and condition, transitioning into the moment that Miyuki stabbed her father, which caused her to run away in the first place. Then we have scenes with Gin on his own as he's separated from the two ladies, where the aspects are also put on display to give a bit more background to his guilt and habits. For one, there's the encounter with the old man he comes across dying on the street when he has hit his low point. You can call this scene one of his many wake-up calls because of what it leads to for his character. But one thing I want to talk about for this moment in the story is what it represents thematically and narratively for Gin. At first, you're kinda tricked into believing this old man is going to be Gin himself in some dreamlike trip state. At least that's what I thought at first, because before we see his face, he's wearing almost all of the same clothes as Gin. He has a similar appearance, is also an alcoholic, has given up on life completely, and doesn't want anyone to remember him. This all heavily connects with Gin's own character and where his habits have been leading him down to. This old man and this plot point as a whole represents two things. One, how the cycle of these poor habits after society has abandoned you can be difficult, if not impossible, to pull yourself out of when you've fallen so far off the deep end. And two, it represents where Gin will end up if he does not address these issues that have been holding him back in life. It's interesting to realize how every character who gives him the biggest lessons resembles him the most, such as the doctor who will be marrying his daughter. He's of similar appearance, similar age, and actually holds the tragic backstory that Gin lied about having himself. And yet that man's life is going well. He's still moving forward. Gin could be there too, but he's too afraid to pull himself out of the hole he's dug himself into. And his journey in this film is to finally build up the strength to face those problems, to finally be honest with himself and the people around him. His arc is probably the most fascinating to me out of all three leads because of this. And you know, I also just want to point out how wonderful it is for Hana's character to be done as well as she is. At first, I was a little concerned because of how queer characters are represented in a lot of anime and manga, but she just might be one of the best examples of good representation and good exposure. Her identity is never treated as a gag or a flaw, and as we go further, we see just how mature and sentimental she is compared to her peers in the narrative. She is our main emotional lens of the story and is usually the one to make the smartest choices, even if she can act too much on emotion and stubbornness at times. Her identity is simply just a part of her that is acknowledged and respected as her being herself and nothing more, and nothing less. It just makes me happy to see a character like this in a film like this, one that's treated with the care, respect, and love that Hana is treated with, rather than trying to make a joke out of them. All three leads of the film are handled very well. No one outshines the other. They all just lift each other up and support each other very well in all scenes regardless of who the focus is at the time. Their family dynamic is nailed better than I've seen most movies do. And it's rare to see an ensemble where everyone is equally given the shine, focus, emotion, and dimensions that these three have. It might be the most impressive aspect of this film because it can be very easy to get carried away with one character while the others aren't as focused or developed. But this film jumps over that hurdle because it really feels like Satoshi Kon loves and cares about each lead equally. It's part of why this much simpler story works so well, because the backgrounds and history behind these characters have so many layers and dimensions to them that their personalities, which are already vibrant, diverse, and exaggerated, aren't the only thing carrying the entertainment factor of this film. Despite being more conventional, it still has just as much to say about people and human society as his other works do, just in a much different, more traditional way. But even when following a traditional story structure, Kon never loses his touch, nor does he lose his vision. That is also why the holiday setting is very fitting for this film. While it is not centered solely around the fact that it is Christmas, the spirit of what the holiday represents and winter culture are still present in the cracks of the story. Hana's haikus, the idea of making this baby's Christmas gift to be finding her mother while the others reconcile with their pasts, it still holds immense importance even if it's not a typical quote-unquote Christmas movie. The spirit is still there and it still holds thematic significance. And so I think it works perfectly being set during the holidays. The atmosphere fits within it too, as I may just believe it could be Satoshi Kon's most well animated and most well lit feature. The holiday and low lighting setting makes for a lot of fantastic winter visuals whilst not taking away from the fluid and smoothened movements of the character. The film has a cool tone that shifts to a warmer vibrancy when we approach the more emotional and personal scenes, and I really enjoy the way color temperature is utilized in that facet. It's simple and would go unnoticed by many, but I love it. Plus, I'm 100% gonna watch it again during Christmas time, so it truly is a perfect Christmas film. Tokyo Godfathers is a found family tale that brings together those that feel society has thrown them away. People whose guilt have buried them into a hole they're unable to bring themselves out of due to the fear of facing that guilt. It shows us that our mistakes do not make us who we are on a personal level in multiple respective perspectives while broadening our view on how the world fails to support and leaves those people behind. Despite said messaging, Tokyo Godfathers ends off on a very optimistic note, as these people who have found each other were able to face these problems due to them lifting each other up and overcoming things they wouldn't have been able to do alone, which shows how sometimes a person to support you may be all you really need. how that support can help us integrate ourselves back into the world through love that creates bravery and honesty. It's something that I love about Satoshi Kon's catalog as a whole. How, despite the darker, more introspective themes that don't always show humanity and society in the brightest light, can still end on an optimistic note that gives us a glimmer of light for an uncertain future. Something to look forward to despite the sometimes terrifying loops that life may throw at us. It's difficult to compare it to his other 3 films, since out of them all, it is the most different in terms of style and structure, and yet it's still so clearly and unapologetically Kon-esque. His fingerprints are still clear as day here, which makes it all the more easy to appreciate and respect as another masterpiece from a master of the medium. That's all that I have to talk about today for this video. If you enjoyed it, once again, leave a like and subscribe if you're new. I still have a couple more videos in this Satoshi Kon series left to do. I still have to cover Paprika, and then we need to rank his films. So subscribe and turn the bell notification on so you can watch the end of this series and watch the other videos in it. Next week we are going to cover Paprika, so stay tuned for that. Share it with your friends if you haven't, of course, because the algorithm really depends on that and boosts my channel based on engagements like that. So I would really appreciate if you do. We're getting closer and closer to 10,000 subscribers, and I really believe we can reach that by the end of the year. So once again, subscribe if you're new, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.